Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Anna. I am a success coach specialized in leadership and mindset coaching. And today I have a wonderful guest who's with me today. And she has a wealth of experience in pharmacy, and we used to work together. But I'll let her introduce herself and we'll get started.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Laurie. I am a pharmacist by trade and have had a little bit of a journey. I am just starting in sales now, but I'm excited to tell you all about it today.
Yeah. So if you can kind of give a bit background of like where you went to school, what was your
Mhm.
first job, and then we'll start there and then we'll follow up.
Perfect. Yeah, so went to pharmacy school at Roosevelt in Illinois. I was in the first graduating class, so that was really exciting. And yeah, after that, I went into home infusion for about 7 years. Loved it. I was at a company called IV Solutions. They're again in Chicago in the suburbs. Great place. And after about 7 years, started to get a little bit antsy and just kind of interested in exploring what else is out there. I always thought I would be on a more non-traditional path and was wanting to explore that further. So got interested in digital health, health tech kind of realm of healthcare at that point, and joined a company that did copay card and coupon adjudication. So really got an entrance, kind of dipping a toe into the tech world there. Learned a lot about manufacturers, about payers, how that side of the business works, and kind of seeing those numbers and how a more tech forward company functions. And then I got laid off and was trying to figure out where to go next and kind of what I wanted to do with my pharmacy experience so far. I did a short stint in workers' comp claims, which again learned a lot about payers, a lot about just how that whole process work, insurance, all that. And then I just started at a new company where I will be doing sales. So it is a vaccine management software for pediatric offices. Pharmacy aligned, but definitely not exactly pharmacy. Definitely a career shift, a big pivot, but really excited to again learn everything, absorb what I can, and then hopefully down the line combine that with the pharmacy skill and clinical skills that I do have to see where that takes me.
Yeah. Wow. So that's a lot of information for those out there. Just like zoom through all her journey and how Laurie and I met. Full disclosure, we previously worked together as her career coach, and that's how she transitioned from home infusion into her first digital health role. So full disclosure for that. But since then, we still maintaining contact and just talking because once a mentor, always a mentor. Once a coach, always a coach is what I tell my client. So I know you mentioned a lot up there, but like, can you share a little bit about like what are the key turning points in your career that led you where you are today? Like, you were in home infusion for a long time, almost a decade, and
Mhm.
then pivot over. Like, what triggers that for you specifically, going from home infusion into more like digital health?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I think I felt myself getting antsy because I felt like I wasn't just learning as much as I used to, and felt a little bit tapped out at the place I was at. I felt really confident walking in every morning. I sort of knew it like the back of my hand. I would still get challenged, but I felt like I really kind of conquered how to solve all the problems. And there were a lot of problems left to be solved, don't get me wrong, but I felt really, really comfortable. And I think I didn't want to get too comfortable. So I think when I started to feel very comfortable, I knew it was time to sort of start looking at what could be my next challenge. And I think that's really what sparked it. Plus, I had a long commute, other little things like that. But I think kind of the main hint that I had was that I was very comfortable there.
Hmm. And then I know, transitioned to this other role. What were your biggest challenges then when you transition from a home infusion stable, you know everything, to something that you're like, whoa, brand new world? What was your
Yeah. I feel like just staying curious is really important in any new role. It's hard, I think, to start over, really, even if it's just the same job somewhere else or a new job that's similar to what a job you had, starting over, I think is difficult, and I think we need to like give ourselves credit for that. I don't think I did that. And now that I'm starting in sales again, I'm like, oh, it's actually very hard and humbling, and kind of giving yourself some grace. But I think just being curious and asking questions, and like a lot of places, I think, like talking to people and seeing what fresh perspectives people bring, because they haven't been in this place and they can see it with fresh eyes and provide feedback that maybe, seems really obvious to someone that's new and can question it, versus someone who's done it every day and is just used to the process and isn't questioning it because that's what it was. So I think I found those things to be valuable in bringing to a new place that I come to.
Yeah, and you were a lead pharmacist at Home Infusions, and then can you tell people what was the role that you transitioned to? Was that director of pharmacy? I'll let you kind of explain a bit more.
Yeah, it was, technically director of pharmacy services, and it included a lot of things. Like I said, it was a small startup, so it was very much help out where you can, and, you gotta be scrappy, and if, one day we got to put up monitor arms, that's what we're doing, and if one day we need to be calling insurance companies, that's what we're doing. So, it
Mm.
was very just fill in the gaps. I was the only pharmacist there, which was exciting, but also, I was that sort of I was the one pharmacist, so I had to take care of the pharmacy portions. And if I didn't know an answer, I'd never really been in that specific space, and it was more specialty drugs and dermatology. So I kind of had to know where to figure that out, or where to go to get the answers.
Mm. Wow. So, what would you say are some of the challenges if you face as a woman in your areas or in those roles? What would and how do you overcome?
That's a great question. I don't know that I have the full answer to that. I think I'm still working on it every day.
Yeah,
But I think
maybe let's
being,
start with challenge first that you
yeah,
consider, and then yeah, we're all work in progress.
yeah. I think something that I struggled with was, um, I often feel like I have to know a full solid answer before speaking up. And I think, um, and I'm still working on that, but even if I have an idea, or just a nugget that might help, feeling comfortable to speak up, and maybe saying like, I don't know if this is the whole thing about this, but I have this idea, and maybe someone else can fill you in or something like that. But really kind of having the confidence to, admit you don't know everything, not publicly, but like with whatever group you're in, and feeling comfortable to still give your ideas or give feedback, even if it's not fully supported, and knowing where to find that information, or knowing who to ask to fill in whatever gaps that you might have.
Do you feel like you're would it be helpful, I guess the question would, to have a supportive environment, or at least have one friend that you can confine to and say, hey, this is what I struggle with, or these are my thoughts, but I'm not sure. What do you think, like in terms of, in a way, like mentorship and support, right? Like, did you feel like you had, how did you get mentors in your role, and like what do you think is important for people who step into a role similar to yours?
Yeah, I think, well, I think first of all, like having a work friend is also always really helpful.
Mhm.
Just having someone that knows how the company works, knows the environment you're in. You can tell your friends about it, you can tell your family about it, but no one knows it better than someone that's there with you. That's not always possible. Obviously, that takes time, but I found that any job that I've had, it's a lot easier when you have sort of a buddy to, that's kind of a safe space, and that you can ask questions, that are maybe like off the record, or what's the history with this. So I
Mm.
found that to be really helpful and just more enjoyable for the everyday at any job. But yeah, I do think that other mentors or leaders that have an idea or have been in a similar position and can sort of gently guide you with problems that they've probably seen come up, has been very helpful, and very, um, just makes you feel less alone, I think. And
Yeah.
knowing that like this is not just a you problem, this has happened to lots of people and will continue to happen to lots of people, but there's ways to solve it, or go about it, or know where to get answers.
Wow. And I know it was like a brand new role for you too. It's not right. Like it was a new role that was created that you stepped
Mhm.
into that. So, what are some important qualities as a female leader, would you say, once you step into that role and cultivate it? And then, yeah, what do you feel like was the most important qualities that you brought into that role from a leadership standpoint?
Yeah. I was lucky, I think, because my manager was also a woman, and she was very, attentive and just had a really keen eye for a lot of interesting, um, things. Like in meetings, we would, if we were with a client, we would discuss after. The insights that she had were really interesting and wonderful, and I learned a lot from her.
Mm,
I think that helped me to just learn how to navigate that type of role. It was a different role. She wasn't a pharmacist, she wasn't ever clinical, but she had sort of that business acumen that I never had before, and so I learned a lot from her in that way. I think that, women in general sometimes, again, stereotypically, but tend to be a little bit more empathetic and see things from a different lens that I think sometimes men are a little bit more abrasive is not the word, but very a little bit more black and white, and I think, the lens that women have is sometimes a little bit more nuanced, which
mm,
can be definitely to our benefit. And again, like to interpret a situation, I think when, the owner of the company versus my woman boss would see the same problem, it'd be very different aspects of it, both necessary, but just different. So I think as a woman in leadership positions and just any positions at all, I think we have a little bit of a different lens a lot of the time that we can dissect in a different way.
mm. Do you think that's a learn versus like a nurture versus a nature thing, like on the job versus it you come with it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's both, definitely, because I think I had to learn how to sort of, um, evolve that sense and kind of that view,
Mm,
and with every job, it's different. You need to know what to look for, you need to know what you need to know what you need to know. I came in and didn't know, what am I looking for? Like, what was the point of this meeting? What am I really trying to read between the lines? So, I think a lot of that was learned, but I think I had the tools that I just needed to sort of fine tune.
got you. And then when you walk into that role, did you feel prepared for the role itself? And if not, how did you get yourself to settling into the role and like advancing the role itself?
Yeah, I definitely don't think I was prepared. But again, I think it's asking questions and not being shy about it. I think with any role, it's really helpful and important to understand who you're working with. What is everybody else doing around you? What's everyone's sort of purpose, or what's the point of their job, really? And then trying to figure out what's the point of your job. And I often like to ask people if I'm shadowing them or, again, learning a new role, how can my job what can I do in my job to make your job easier? I think that is really like I that's helpful to me if people ask me, and sometimes it makes me question, what am I doing and how can what you're doing make it easier for me? So I
Mm,
think seeing how you fit into the ecosystem and how other people fit in and how to best mesh together to make everything work better.
yeah.
I found
No,
that to be really helpful.
yeah. It's like being able to work as a team, right? And
Mhm.
in the end, it's like what you do make their job easy and vice versa. And it is a team, like in healthcare, even though sometimes we operate in silos, but in the end, it's like a domino effect. If I don't do things right, then it affects you and vice versa.
Right.
I know you mentioned recently that you make a significant change or pivot to
Mhm.
this role. So can you kind of talk a bit more about your new role? Like what are some responsibilities? I know you're still new, so you may not know the
Yeah.
ins and outs, but like just briefly, like why did you transition to this role and like how did you pick it?
That's a great question too. So like I said, I think I always sort of knew I was going to take a non-traditional route. And throughout my different jobs, you try different things, you see what you like, try to figure out what gives you energy, what sort of drains you. And I found that I love kind of maintaining and creating relationships and talking to people is, in a job where I'm not talking to anybody and I'm just stuck away in a corner, I do not do well. I'm craving for that social aspect, I think, of a job. And so, how I actually got interested in sales, I think I've always sort of been, sales curious, if you will. And I had a friend who he does sales. He sells like dining robots. He does enterprise sales for these dining robots at like nursing homes, places like that. And he had a show in Chicago and was like, "Hey, will you just come out and help me? We just need, bodies on the floor. Bring leads in. We'll hang out. It'll be fun." I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great." And I, definitely something out of my comfort zone, something completely different, but did it and actually loved it. I had the best time ever. It was just great to be there and try to get people in and talk to them and tell them about this product. And I think it was the first time I saw sales in a way that wasn't, it just changed my view of sales. It wasn't like used car salesman, no offense to those guys. And it was different than pharma sales. It was this, I saw it in a new light. And I even saw one of his sales guys be like, you know what, I don't think we're a good match. Like, thanks for checking us out, but I don't think this would make a good partnership for either of us. And that was the first time I heard that. Like, I'm like, someone is saying no to it? Like, what do you mean? So that opened my eyes a little bit to the fact that sales is not just kind of this picture that I had in my head. And also, I think for pharmacists, it's a lot of us are very type A, and a steady income is very important. And having a variable piece to your income is terrifying and a scary thing. And I was always, I think, a little bit afraid of that. And it was just one of those moments where I was like, you know what? I don't have any kids yet and things like that. Stakes seem low. Why don't I kind of take this opportunity to at least explore something that I've been curious about? So again, it was really through networking that I had another friend who has a company who was like, hey, we might be needing someone in Chicago. You know, if you're interested, let me know. And it kind of went from there. So
Wow. So one thing leads to the next. And I'm going to give you kudos for being courageous. I guess step out of your comfort zone, because most people tend to be like, no, I'm not familiar with that water. I like this water here that I've been in for 20, 30 years. I'm not going to change. So, and Laurie, knowing you for the past few years, I know you're always like apt to change. And most people are more risk averse. I think you're more risk prone, which kind of align with what you're trying to do, like digital health and sales. And one thing that you said that really struck me, I recently, in the recent years, I also have a different perspective when it comes to sales. Like, it's really a service, right? If you have a product that you know can help people, I'm going to do my best to show you the product. If you say no, that's okay. But at least I know that I've done my job that I'm trying to serve. So instead of seeing sales as like pushy and all this, I see it's like a way to serve, like similar to coaching. Like, I know my program can help you, and I'm going to show you the cards. And if it doesn't align, it doesn't align. But at least I know I did my due diligence to like help and serve. So similar to what you're doing too. So yeah, it's different. And pharmacy school doesn't teach us this. I think school in general teaches about sales and business and finance, things like that. But it's so crucial for our survival when we like finish school. So what are some strategies that you use to stay empowered and motivated? I know the laid off, like how did that impact you? Because I know that can be really scary. So if you can just elaborate a bit more on that experience, and then of course transition to the next.
Yeah, I think I'm really lucky. I have a wonderful support system, multiple, I would say. I have a lot of close friends and family who are really, um, always happy to lend an ear, let me vent, kind of talk me through stuff. So I feel very lucky about that. I'm in a couple of, healthcare orgs too, or kind of groups, a couple of Slack groups where there's a lot of wonderful people in those as well that are in the healthcare industry. So it can kind of help guide me that way as well. When I was looking to make the change into sales, I talked to everyone I can get my hands on, basically within sales or within healthcare or other parts of healthcare and startups, and anyone who I could get their ear and be like, what do you think about this? Is this crazy? Like, is this a crazy move? And, or does it make sense? Like, is there a trajectory here? And people who know more than I do. And, that phrase of like, you want to be the dumbest in the room, or like, you never want to be the smartest one in the room. I think that's awesome, because I feel like the dumbest in the room in a lot of these groups. And I love it because everyone is awesome. So I think knowing where to look and having people to talk to is really what helped me. And, I was born with a great family and friends and things like that. But a lot of these relationships, I think you need to cultivate, like me and you, like we've stayed in touch throughout all these years. So I know I can come to you with questions and things like that. So I think maintaining these relationships and growing them and getting them to a point where, I didn't know 5 years ago I was going to get laid off. Like, as a pharmacist, that's not something I ever imagined would happen. I was like, me? Never, right? That's not something that usually happens to pharmacists, at least in a regular pharmacy. So, but, when the time of need came, I did have this network that I could lean on and sort of start to use in a way that I never thought I would need to, but it was there already for me. So
Mm,
I think being proactive in maintaining a network like that is really important.
yeah. And it sounds like you already kind of may answer those questions, but if you were in someone else's shoes, similar to the experience you went through, what were probably like three things you would tell them now? Like if they're like currently your boss is like, sorry, we have to let you go. What are three things you would tell them now if you look at them in the eyes and say these three
Yeah.
things?
I think, you know, take a day or two, cry it out if you want to. I did. And then just if you have the opportunity and you can take some time to explore, take it. Not everyone has that opportunity. So if you can't, that's totally understandable. But like take a day or two, feel sad, but then kind of get to work. I think that's one. Two is that it's not personal. I think that's a really kind of hard thing to accept. I, for a long time, was like, I can't believe this happened to me. Like, what did I do wrong?
Mm,
And then, after a lot of thinking, it's like, it wasn't right for the business. It's nothing I did. Even, as they were laying me off, they told me that, but it wasn't right for the business, and a business is a business. So,
mm,
um, I think finally kind of internalizing that and being like, it's not my fault. This is not something I did. And it's a business, move on. I think, again, it took some time, but once you realize that, it makes it a little bit easier. It did for me.
mm,
And I think, kind of get creative. It's sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. I'm sure in a couple of years I'll look back and be like, thank God this happened. Thank God, because if it didn't, I wouldn't be in this sales job, and who knows what'll happen after this, and all of that stuff. So use it as a positive. I'm sure there's a silver lining that can come out of it. I don't know what that is. Sometimes you don't see it for some time, but I
mm.
think, it's a great opportunity to reset. Maybe there's a company you've been eyeing forever, but have been too scared to apply to. Well, you have nothing to lose now, so go for it. So I think just using it as a reset can be really impactful and helpful, and kind of a clean slate that was handed to you, even though you didn't ask for it.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, so powerful. Thank you for that. I think who would listen to this can definitely resonate with you and what you're saying. And I think it's like you're saying reset button, right? And sometimes it's so hard when you're in that moment. I would imagine I'll be panicking. I'm like, oh my God, what's the next thing? But I think if someone who have an emergency fund and being able to save up and have a support system, I think is a bit better than someone who doesn't. So like preparation comes a long way. But it's still scary. Like you said, I think most pharmacists or anyone is ready for
Mhm.
the situation that comes. But I like it that you say focus on the positive and still be realistic. I think like there's
Definitely.
a terminology called like toxic positivity and not
Mhm.
care, but like yes, this happened. Okay, I'm gonna take a moment and then what's the next step?
Yeah, and I think the worst part typically with anything, I think, is just the waiting game.
Mm,
You apply to jobs and then you wait, right? And you just hurry up and wait. And so I think just kind of mentally preparing yourself for looking for a job sucks. It just does for the most part. If it doesn't, then I'm happy for whoever it didn't suck for. But it just kind of sucks. And just knowing that there's going to be a lot of like uncomfortable, not great moments, and just leaning into it and being comfortable with that, I think, is important, and just makes it a little bit easier, and setting kind of expectations for yourself.
yeah, for sure. And I think kind of the next question aligns with this, like in what ways do you feel like you break barriers or challenge the norms within your industry? Like in pharmacy, you say non-traditional roles you've been taking, but and what impact has this had on your career thus far? You mentioned some of this, but I really want to dive a little bit further into this.
Yeah. I think, again, stereotypically, as pharmacists, we're very, um, safe, risk averse, and just want to sort of, you know, you get a script, you fill it, and you move on to the next, and you just wanna make sure that everything is, like, moving on, and it's safe and it's good, and that's it, right? I'm not explaining it the best way, but I think as pharmacists, we all kind of know what it means. So I think, and you mentioned this too, but just being uncomfortable and taking maybe the riskier routes or the less comfortable ones, and seeing what happens. I think going into stuff and maybe not necessarily knowing what the outcome is going to be, uh, can be scary, but also could be great. And just kind of leaning into it and just letting it happen. I think it's harder than it sounds, but it's also in some ways easier than it sounds. But I just think just getting comfortable with that mindset once you do, and just say like, all right, this is what I'm doing. Let's, learn everything I can and move on in, that direction. I think that's what's helped me. But I think, I don't know that I like broke barriers or, what I forgot what terminology you used, but I think just putting yourself in uncomfortable situations on purpose is not a very pharmacy way of thinking. And I think that's what's helped me. And again, we'll see where I'm at. I feel like I've made a couple steps forward and took about 10 steps back. So this
That's what
could be totally useless information for someone. I don't know, but that's just, we're going for it. I'm taking a chance. I'm going to see what happens.
and that's all we can do, right? Like just take a chance and see where it goes. And like everything you get into is an experience. Like you learn one thing, at least one lessons learned, take away from it. So I know as
Definitely.
we're wrapping up, I want to see how are you managing all the different transition in your life and integrating work-life harmony, balancing that act of having your professional and personal life align.
Yeah, that's a great question too. And I think that's definitely something I've learned too as I've progressed in my career. Um, learning to say no to things. I think I used to be very, very scared of that, at least when I first started working. Like anything that was asked of me, I said, yes, of course.
Mhm.
And I've like, even just this last week, I was asked to help with something. I would have to travel, and one of the days I could do, but another day it didn't work. I have, family coming in or whatever. And I think a couple years ago I would have been like, yes, no problem. Like I'll do it and done it and sacrificed the time with my family.
Mhm.
And I felt a lot more comfortable now saying, it is short notice. I have family coming in, or, you don't even have to give a reason, but I can't do it that day, especially because it, included travel, which is time outside of a regular work day.
Mhm.
And, you know, didn't I did think twice about it. I'm not gonna lie and be like, yeah, it was so easy to do. It wasn't, because I'm still used to being like, yes, yes, of course, but felt a lot more comfortable and, thought about it twice and then moved on. Like I haven't really thought about it since then. I can't do it. And that's okay. So I think having boundaries, I think
Mhm.
more confident setting those boundaries now, as I've learned to, I have to prioritize it. Again, a business is a business. They need to do what's good for the business. You
Mhm.
have to look out for you. The business, a whole good business will, but typically a business is looking out for the business. They're not looking out for you. So, um, being comfortable and, within bounds, you can't just say no to everything and whatever, but looking out for you in a way that's, effective and safe for you and makes you feel comfortable, but also making sure you're doing your job.
Yeah. And I think a part of it is like setting boundaries. Like you have to take care of yourself. Like your cup got to be
Mhm,
full of pour for others, right? Instead of, and this is something honestly I struggle. It's like a work in progress for me, and I think I'm getting better at it. But like, no is a complete sentence. I think one of my mentors
mhm,
did that, and I was like, because I usually say no because X, Y, Z.
mhm,
Just open the door. Well, if you can't do that day, how about this day, right? Versus just say no, then you close
mhm,
the door shut. So I think being able to be comfortable saying no and like
mhm.
that's it. You
Yeah,
know,
but
honestly, I'm
it
working on
takes work.
it would take work. Yeah, for sure. Okay, as we're wrapping up, I usually end this with a three, like a speeding questions.
Okay,
Um, think of the first answer comes out is the first right answer. So there's no right or wrong. I thought this is fun for folks to hear it.
okay.
One thing you wish your boss had told you. Any boss, not just in your previous boss, but any boss. One thing you wish your boss has told you for you to be successful.
For you to be successful, I would say, um, make sure you save. That one boss did tell me that when I was really young and didn't have a 401k, so I think that was helpful, and I think, um, again, be curious. I think that's been such a North Star for me that I learned early on, is just be curious. You don't know where it'll lead you.
Awesome. One thing you wish your mom had told you for it to be successful.
Trust your gut. She did tell me that, but trust your gut, and if you feel something, it's probably something that you is right.
Mm. And one thing you wish your younger self knew.
The only way, I think the only way out is through. Like, just get through it, whatever it is. If it's good, if it's bad, you have to get through it, and the only way out is to experience it. So it is just what you make it. You could, it's kind of in your control, and even if it's a not great situation, it's going to happen. So you'll get through it eventually.
Wow. Okay. And then last questions. How do you define success? What success means to you?
Oh man, I think that's a work in progress too, and I feel like my kind of views on that have continually been changing because again, like I feel like I'm like starting over now. I'm sort of at the bottom of the totem pole, and some people are like, "Well, that's success." I'm like, "Is it?" And so I feel like I may not have a great answer for it. But I feel like ultimately it's do you if you don't hate waking up, I think that's already like some success there. And a lot goes into that, your job, your home life, your a lot goes into that. So I think success is being happy. And again, whether that's you not hating your job, hopefully you like your job, but that's not a reality for a lot of people. And um, I think just being happy to wake up is success.
Wow. And then how can folks get a hold of you if they want to reach out for more info?
Yeah, LinkedIn, email. You have it. I think you maybe will provide that, but it's Laurie Linton 12 at Gmail. And yeah, those are probably the two easiest ways.
Okay, awesome. Well, guys, that is a wrap for this episode. I truly hope that you get to learn a lot from what Laurie's is sharing with you. I did actually. I always enjoy these conversations, and we know each other for years. And my goal here on my YouTube channel is to create the biggest community of leaders so we can collaborate, share things, and learn from each other and help for us to have a successful life and whatever that success looks like for you. I am here. I'm your sister in your journey, and thank you so much. Subscribe to my channel, make comments, and I'll invite more guests. I want to build this YouTube channel and this whole community is so big that I can invite other amazing guests that will come in and share their nuggets. So with that, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.